Sometimes it feels like I'm watching from the outside. Sometimes it feels like I'm breathing, but am I alive? I won't keep searching for answers that aren't here to find. All I know is I'm not home yet. This is not where I belong. Take this world and give me Jesus. This is not where I belong.
So many walls come falling down on me, and when I'm lost in the current of a raging sea, I have this blessed assurance holding me.
All I know is I'm not home yet. This is not where I belong. Take this world and give me Jesus. This is not where I belong. When the earth shakes, I wanna be found in you.
When the lights fade, I wanna be found in you.
All I know is I'm not home yet. This is not where I belong. Take this world and give me Jesus. This is not where I belong. All I know is I'm not home yet. This is not where I belong. Take this world and give me Jesus. This is not where I belong. 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 Hey, welcome to the broadcast, everybody. How's everybody doing? This is kind of odd. I don't have really anybody in the broadcast, but thanks for joining. Who's that? Dawn Crawford, thanks for joining. It's very weird over on Periscope. There's like nobody on the broadcast. It's really, really weird. Alright, we're going to bring on Station Head. And hey, Katie Marie, thanks for joining on. And Barb, thank you so much for joining. How's everybody doing? We're going live on Station Head right now as well. We're live on a bunch of different places, but I just wanted to say hey and thanks for joining. Alright, thanks for joining on live.me as well. Alright, let me go shake some people up over here and see what's going on. I'm gonna go here on voice only, just so you guys can hear my voice over on Station Head. Thanks for being here. Hey Barb, how's it going? Thanks for joining on our broadcast. So nice to see you. I haven't seen you in quite some time. And yeah, I'm gonna bring some of the peeps over here over on Periscope because there seems to be nobody going on, so nobody got my notification. Love it, love it, love it. There we go. Sending. Now we should at least get maybe one or two people, I would think. You know, it's usually what happens. What's up? Stale Milk. Thanks for joining. That is an awesome name. Awesome username. Stale Milk. Alright, guys. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all your shares, your invites, your likes, all the hearts, all that stuff. You guys are awesome, and I do appreciate that. Yeah, it's really weird not getting anybody on a broadcast over on Periscope. It seems very, very odd. But that's okay. And, you know, we'll just, we'll take it as it is, right? Who's that? Lisa, Minister Lisa Hatterley's in the house. Who's that guy? Seeker of the Lost guy? Hey, how's it going? Thanks for joining. Thanks for being here and supporting the broadcast on the Jesus. This is another Jesus Did It broadcast, and oh wow, that's a lot of people you invited there. Thanks so much for inviting people. That is awesome, and very, very, very interesting. Make sure I'm following you. Yeah, interesting. Alright, well, that is what it is. Okay, so thanks for joining. Thanks for being here. Hey, live.me. If someone tells you a secret, will you tell your best friend? Well, no, probably not. I am stunning. I think you need to go have your eyes checked. I'm just letting you know. But thanks for joining. I'm stunning. That's the first I've heard that one. That's pretty funny. What's going on? Irreplaceable Gabe, thanks for being here. Yes, yes, thanks so much for being here. Alright, so alright, who am I? Alright, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you too. What's up, Mohammed? Thanks for joining over there on D Live. So guys, every night I am not gonna stay. Please pray for me. Having an anxiety attack, don't know why. Certainly. Lord Heavenly Father, we lift up Lisa tonight, Lord. We just ask that you come into her presence, Lord, and just give her comfort and peace. Wrap your arms around her and let her know that she is safe and can be content in you, Lord. Lord, we just ask for an overwhelming peace to come over her, to rid out that anxiety. Lord, we cast that anxiety away from her. In Jesus' mighty and powerful name we pray. Amen and amen. All right. So, who am I? I am Jason Wallace. I'm a believer and follower of Jesus Christ. I'm a prayer warrior, an intercessor, I'm a Bible reader, a devoted husband and father. I am a child of God. I am a new creation in Christ. I am a citizen of heaven. I am a friend of Christ. I'm righteous and holy. And I'm a very proud member of the Jesus Did It family. And Jesus Did It has a website. You want to take a look at our website at www.jesusdidit.org. And you can take a look at that website. And right there where that red link is, the red link, you want to go ahead and check that out. Wow, thanks for all those lemons and stuff. You guys are awesome. Check out that link there that has the red arrow. And when you go to that, you'll be able to download the affirmation sheet. And that sheet has all of those I am statements, plus a whole lot more. And you definitely do not want to miss that. Thank you for inviting followers. It was very interesting over on Periscope tonight. There's no viewers. Seems very odd. Not likely. So I don't know what's going on with that thing, but that's all right. We'll keep it pushing on. someone here is in need of hearing some words, so we'll definitely keep pushing. Excuse me. All right, so yeah, the Jesus Did It website. You want to take a look at that, JesusDidIt.org. Also, if you want to take a look and join the Facebook group, all you do is go to facebook.com/JesusDidItTV, and inside of there, there's a group and there's a page you can like and all this other stuff. And that's where our monthly broadcast is, as well as on Periscope. So you definitely want to follow that page so you can make sure that you catch the broadcast when we do that broadcast every month. Yeah, sorry. Alright, so every time that we broadcast, which is usually maybe once or twice, maybe 3 times a week, it all depends. Just depends on when I can get in here and start a broadcast. So there we go. Okay, so tonight's song, excuse me. I didn't really pick a song tonight. What do you guys think? Anybody have any requests? We have let's see. What do we got? Reckless Love. We've got Fear is a Liar. We've got 10,000 Reasons. Who I Am. The Resurrecting Song. Happy Day Song. That's a nice new song. Nice song. I had never heard this song before, but apparently it was an older song. Tell Your Heart to Beat Again. Here we go. Let's try this one. Oh, my YouNow is acting weird. Let's do this one. I like this one.
Shattered like you've never been before. The life you knew in 1,000 pieces on the floor, and words fall short in times like these, when the world drives you to your knees. You think you're never gonna get back to the you that used to be. Tell your heart to beat again. Close your eyes and breathe it in. Let the shadows fall away. Step into the light of grace. Yesterday's a closing door. You don't live there anymore. Say goodbye to where you've been, and tell your heart to beat again.
Beginning, just let the word wash over you. It's alright now. Love's healing hands have pulled you through. So get back up, take step one. Leave the darkness, feel the sun. 'Cause your story's far from over, and your journey's just begun. Tell your heart to beat again. Close your eyes and breathe it in. Let the shadows fall away. Step into the light of grace. Yesterday's a closing door. You don't live there anymore. Say goodbye to where you've been, and tell your heart to beat again. Let every heart break and every scar be a picture that reminds you who has carried you this far. Love sees farther than you ever could. In this moment, heaven's working everything for your good. Tell your heart to beat again.
Close your eyes and breathe it in.
Let the shadows fall away. Step into the light of grace.
Yesterday's are closing door. You don't live there anymore. Say goodbye to where you've been and tell your heart to begin again.
Begin again. Begin again. Tell your heart to beat again. Oh.
Tell your heart to beat again.
Okay, alright. So guys, hey, just to let you know, misspelled word, no problem. So guys, hey, listen. So this is what we do. We broadcast on a bunch of different platforms. So if you see me looking around at different things or not responding to you right away, or maybe you're a little confused because you either can't see, like the guys on Station Head, or there is, if the guys on Live.me wouldn't have taken away the gaming thing, I don't know. I used to be able to broadcast with OBS, which was really nice. So you can catch me on Live.me. You can catch me on YouTube, YouNow, DLive.io, Periscope, which is our main one that we've started with, Facebook, Twitch, Smashcast, FC2, Stream.me, Peaks, Streamcraft, Instajib, Vaughn Live, Afrika TV, OK.ru, and Station Head, which is a new app. It's kind of like a radio station. It's kind of cool. Pastor Rick Costa, thanks for joining. There's only 1 or 2 people. I don't know what's going on. There's no viewers on Periscope. It's very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you so much for super hearts and shares. You are awesome. Thank you. All right, let's pray for Barb's son tonight. Forgive me his name. Lord, we lift up Barb's son, Lord. You know who he is. You know who she is, Lord. You know that they are struggling through this sickness that he is dealing with. Lord, we command healing in his body for this type 1 diabetes. Lord, we just command that diabetes to go away in Jesus' mighty and powerful name. Diabetes be gone in Jesus' name. Lord, let his blood sugar level out and be just perfect and the way it should be. Lord, we ask this in Jesus' mighty and powerful name. Lord, and also please give Barb and her family peace and comfort as they're helping that child deal with the effects of this disease. So Lord, we just ask this in Jesus' mighty and powerful name for peace and healing. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. That's what we do. We gotta pray. Someone asks for prayer, we gotta pray. And no matter what we're doing, we stop and pray for sure. So thanks for joining, and thanks for being here. And we broadcast. This is what we do. We spread the light of the Lord. Can you tell us a joke? Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'm in the mood for a joke right now. I'm kind of being a little serious. So, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. You can tell us a joke if you want. Anyway. So, that is our song for tonight. And, so, our Bible reading is going to be from Psalm chapter 70. And I better take a drink of water because it sounds like my throat is not in a good place right now. Alright, so Psalm chapter 70. Sorry about that. Here we go. Much better. Okay, so Psalm chapter 70. To the chief musician, A psalm of David, to bring remembrance. Make haste, O God, to deliver me. Make haste to help me, O Lord. This is a prayer for relief from adversaries. This is probably somebody there. Satan offered Jesus to the world to worship him. That's a joke. There you go. It's even more as he thinks that he won, right? Oh, this is a short chapter. Goodness. That's a super short chapter. Here we go. Let them be ashamed and confounded who seek my life. Let them be turned back and confused who desire my hurt. Let them be turned back because of their shame, who say, Aha, aha. Let all of those who seek you rejoice and be glad in you. And let those who love your salvation say continually, Let God be magnified. But I am poor and needy. Make haste to me, O God. You are my help and my deliverer. O Lord, do not delay. And that was from the New King James Version, chapter 70. And, wow, that's a short one, but it's a pretty powerful one for sure. And, yeah, that is pretty good. Okay, so that's today's reading, Psalm chapter 70. And, every time we come on a broadcast, we read from the Our Daily Bread. What's going on? A garment of praises. Thank you so much for joining. For Agape, thank you for being here as well. Guys, every time that we broadcast, we read from the Our Daily Bread. Ooh, it's translucent. It's reading right through my green screen. It's going right through the green screen. Our Daily Bread, which is a free publication. You might be able to get it at your church. If not, take a look at the website, odb.org, and you can download it yourself. They can send you a physical copy. You can get an app on the phone. There's like a instant messenger thingy. Text it to you, whatever it may be. That's definitely good. So today's message for Monday, May 6th. Sev, what's going on, Sev? Thanks for joining. Monday, May 6th. The title is Come and Get It. And this is written by David Roper. And here we go. So, come and get it. I peeked over the grape stake fence that encloses our backyard. There I saw folks running, jogging, walking, and shuffling around on the track that surrounds the park behind our home. I used to do that when I was stronger. I thought, and a wave of dissatisfaction washed over me. Later, while reading the scriptures, I came across Isaiah 55:1. Come, all you who are thirsty. And I realized again that dissatisfaction, thirst, is not the rule, not the exception, or is the rule, not the exception in this life. Nothing, not even the good things of life, can be fully satisfied. If I had strong legs, like a Sherpa, a mountain climbing guide, there would be something else in my life that I'd be unhappy about. Our culture is always telling us, in one way or another, that something we do, buy, wear, spray on, roll on, or ride in, will give us endless pleasure. But that's a lie. We can't get complete satisfaction from anything in the here and now, no matter what we do. Rather, Isaiah invites us to come again and again to God and the scriptures to hear what he has to say. And what does he say? His love for David of old is everlasting and faithful. And that goes for you and me as well. We can come to him. Amen. Their questions for today are, in what ways are you thirsty? How can knowing God is faithful help you today? Interesting questions. How tall am I? 5'9". How tall are you? Oh, we got a total of 50 viewers. I got more viewers on live.me than I do on Periscope. That's very interesting. Very interesting. Anyway, that is good. So that's a good message for today. I guess there's a little bit, I don't know if it's a little passage or just whatever it is written by somebody else. It says, "Whom have we, Lord, but thee? Soul thirst to satisfy. Exhaustless spring, the waters free. All of the streams are dry." It's like a poem. Alright, so today's reading was from Isaiah 55, verses 1 through 6. And the key verse for today is Isaiah 55, verse 3. "Give an ear and come to me. Listen that you may live." Yeah. That's some good stuff right there. Good stuff. Alright. Periscope's all wonky today. Very interesting. Alright. Okay. So, where were we? Devotional. Alright, guys. If you have any prayer requests, praise reports, anything like that, I know we've already prayed for a couple people already. But yeah, anytime. Anytime you have a prayer, go right ahead and put it in the broadcast, and we would love to pray for you. I guess just some news. Some stuff going on. We are going to be broadcasting our Jesus Did It team. Hopefully all of us will be there to do the broadcast for the monthly broadcast, which would be testimonies, and that's on Periscope, on Facebook Live, and Periscope on the at Jesus Did It TV account. So you want to make sure that you catch those broadcasts for sure. What's going on, Jared? Thanks for joining. So yeah, definitely. So if you have any testimonies about prayer when we prayed for you here on this broadcast, or Pastor Rick's broadcast, or Becky's broadcast, Joshua's or broadcast, or Wendy's broadcast, if any of the other previous Jesus Did It broadcasters have prayed for you, and you've had just a good praise report for that prayer, definitely let us know. Send us an email. Send me an email, or Pastor Rick. Go to rick@jesusdidit.com or .org, or Jason at jesusdidit.org, and definitely let us know so we can include it in the broadcast. So message us or email, whichever you'd like, and you can let us know. Hey, what's going on, Diane? Thanks so much for joining. Definitely let us know. Send us an email or a message, and we would love to read your testimony as you about how a prayer has been healed, or something has been answered. I got thirsty today, sorry. It's good water too, so it makes it even better. It's like 8.0 pH. It's supposed to be a good alkaline water. So that is that. So if you have any prayer requests or praise reports, we certainly want to pray for you. Yeah. Alright, well. How's it going? How's it going? I guess we'll do a couple of songs and then we'll head on out. If you guys have any prayer requests or anything like that, make sure you put them in the chat stream. We would love to pray for you, for sure. And I'm going to pick another song. Let's see what we got. There we go. It's for our friend Edwin. Haven't seen him in a while. Love to see him sometime soon.
Who am I that the Lord of all the earth would care to know my name, would care to feel my hurt? Who am I that the bright and morning star would choose to light the way for my ever-wandering heart? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. I'm yours. I am yours.
Who am I that the eyes that see my sin would look on me with love and watch me rise again? Who am I that the voice that calmed the sea would call out through the rain and calm the storm in me? Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done. Not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and you told me who I am. I'm
Not because of who I am, but because of what you've done.
not because of what I've done, but because of who you are. I am a flower quickly fading, here today and gone tomorrow. A wave tossed in the ocean, a vapor in the wind. Still you hear me when I'm calling. Lord, you catch me when I'm falling, and I told you who I am. I am yours. I'm yours.
I am yours. I am yours. Whom shall
fear, 'cause I am yours. I am yours. Oh, I'm yours.
I'm yours, Lord. I'm yours. That is statement is true, ever so true, every day. Man, looks like it's gonna be a slow night on Periscope, but that's all right. Must be something else going on. Not a big deal. We can shut down early, get to bed early, and who knows? It might be on tomorrow. The way it's looking, might have a chance to come on broadcast tomorrow night too. So hopefully a little bit earlier. But Primo Chronic, thanks for joining, and yeah, thanks for being here. Thanks for joining. Thanks for being part of the broadcast. Guys, if you have any prayer requests or praise reports, please put them in the broadcast. We would love to pray for you. If you have, I guess anything to say, just go ahead and put it in there. And we'd love to hear from you. Isis, thanks for joining on that broadcast. Guys on Station Head, I'm going to go ahead and put you back on some music, and then I'm going to hop you guys out. So, Station Head, thanks so much for... Hey, early, it's midnight, right? No, tomorrow earlier. Hopefully tomorrow will be earlier. Today was a little bit later than I wanted to be, but something told me to come on the broadcast, so and maybe it was just to pray for Barb and for Lisa, and that's all that we needed to do, and that's fine. I got just learning how to be obedient and listen to His word. So, guys over on Station Head, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for joining. We're going to put you back to your music so you guys can go back to the radio station. I love you guys, but most importantly, know that Jesus Christ loves you. And that is the most important thing. So take it easy. God bless. And we'll see you on the next broadcast. All right, we're going to end that one. We'll end that one. There we go. That guy's all done. That's good. All right, so what is going on? Let's keep praying. It has let up a lot, still very little. You had a seizure. Oh no. Lord, we just we ask and command for healing in Lisa's body. Lord, this anxiety and these seizures and all this trauma, Lord, we just ask that they be repaired, renewed, and rejuvenated. Lord, we ask that you take it away, command it out of her body in Jesus' mighty and powerful name. Lord, we just ask for healing in Jesus' name. We pray. Amen and amen. All right. So, yeah, considering it is midnight, it might be time to go to sleep. Angel Love, thanks so much for joining on the broadcast. Thanks for sharing out, and thanks for being here. We are probably going to play out some songs and head on out because it's late, and yeah, I don't think I'm going to make 200 viewers tonight, which is fine. Kind of not really interested in that aspect of it. I'd love to maintain the broadcast, the level of broadcast, but what is it, gold or what a bronze level? Would love to make sure that we keep that level. But if it's not in our, if it's not in for us, that's it. It is what it is. So I'm not gonna force it. Not gonna stay up another 2 hours just to get 200. Thanks so much for popping in and saying hello. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for watching the replay. I do appreciate that. Alright, so guys, remember our topic this month, testimonies. It's going to be on the @JesusDidItTV accounts. You definitely want to make sure you don't miss that. And yeah, that's it. So make sure you catch Pastor Rick's broadcast tomorrow. I think he said he'll be a little bit later tomorrow. But yep, that's what that one is. So maybe I'll be able to sneak in tomorrow and catch my broadcast a little bit earlier. We'll see. Then a little bit earlier than 11 o'clock or 11:30 or whatever time it is. We've been going for 41 minutes now. I don't know. Let's go ahead and play a song, I guess. Just because I feel like sticking around for a little bit longer. Yeah. Here we go. Let's do this one.
Of God in helpless babe, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to save. Till on that cross as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on him was laid. Here in the death of Christ I live. His body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day, up from the grave he rose again. And as he stands in victory, since curse has lost its grip on me, for I
to life, no fear in death. This is the power of Christ in me. From life's first cry to final breath, Jesus commands my destiny. No power of hell, no scheme of man can ever pluck me from his hand till he returns or calls me home. Here in the power of Christ I'll stand.
God bless you all. Happy Easter from SGE Brothers.
Amen. God bless all of you.
Happy
Have a
Easter.
wonderful day.
God
Thank
bless
God
you.
for Jesus.
So that was the song we sung with the Smule Gospel Experience. And Will Pajak, thanks so much for joining. Smule Gospel Experience, really, really good group of Christians on the Smule app. So definitely, if you're interested in singing with me, you know, I sing secular songs too. So certain ones, I mean, obviously they're not the real bad ones, but ones that I've, you know, grown up with it and stuff like that. Certainly. This was another one we did too. It was pretty good. It was a group song, and this one was for birthdays for April. So I really like this one too. So I'm gonna play this one tonight too.
The greatest day in history. Death is beaten, you have rescued me. Sing it out, Jesus is alive.
The empty cross, the empty grave, life eternal, you have won the day. Shout it out, Jesus is alive. He's alive.
Oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Forever I am changed.
When I stand in that place, free at last, meeting face to face, I am yours, Jesus, you are mine.
Endless joy, perfect peace. Earthly pain finally will cease. Celebrate, Jesus is alive.
He's alive. Oh, happy day, you wash my sin away. Oh, happy day, I'll never be the same. Forever I am changed.
washed my sin away. Oh, happy day, happy day. I'll never be the same.
Oh, no, no, no. Forever I am changed, changed. I'll never be the same.
All right. So that's pretty much it for tonight, guys. Thanks so much for joining. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being part of another Jesus Did It broadcast. And guys, I'm gonna try my best to come on broadcast a little bit earlier and a little bit more frequently. So I'm gonna try. So keep me in prayer for that, and keep my family in prayer as well. Just for healing and things like that. So definitely. All right, guys. So thanks so much for being here. Thanks for joining. I'm gonna pray, and then we're gonna head on out. So let's do that. Lord Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time tonight, Lord. We thank you for the people that come on the broadcast, and the ones that were able to hear your word, Lord, and maybe take a piece of it and stick it in their heart, and for them to be able to use it whenever they need to, Lord. And we just ask that you continue to use me and this ministry to glorify you, Lord. I just thank you for the opportunity to be able to just minister to people and to be able to lift people up and to know who you are. Lord, I thank you for everything that you've done, everything that you continue to do. Lord, we ask this in Jesus' mighty and powerful name we pray. Amen. All right. It's time for some sleep. I love you guys. Get some rest and be blessed, and know that Jesus Christ loves you. And that's a fact, Jack. And thanks so much for being here. Thanks for all your hearts, super hearts, invites, and follows and shares. You guys are awesome. Do a really good job of doing that. And thanks so much for supporting this Jesus Did It broadcast. All right, so thank you for coming again. And I think we're going to Fear is a Liar. Yeah. All right, guys, love you. Get some sleep. Be blessed.
When he told you you're not good enough, when he told you you're not right, when he told you you're not strong enough to put up a good fight, when he told you you're not worthy, when he told you you're not loved, when he told you you're not beautiful, that you'll never be enough. Fear, he is a liar. He will take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear, he is a liar. He will rob your rest, steal your happiness, 'cause you're fear. In the fire goes fear, he is a liar.
When he told you you were trouble, you'll forever be alone. When he told you you should run away, you'll never find a home. When he told you you were dirty and you should be ashamed. When he told you you could be the one that grace could never change.
Oh, fear, he is a liar. He will take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear, he is a liar. He will rob your rest, steal your happiness, cast your fear in the fire.
'Cause fear, he is a liar. Let your fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall, and your love is all I feel. Let your fire fall and cast out all my fears.
Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. Let your fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel.
Oh, let your fire fall and cast out all my fears. Let your fire fall, your love is all I feel. Oh, fear,
He is a liar. He will take your breath, stop you in your steps. Fear, he is a liar. He will rob your rest, steal your happiness,
cast your fear in the fire. 'Cause fear, he is a liar. His fear, he is a liar. The head that once was crowned with thorns is crowned with glory now. The Savior knelt to wash our feet, now his feet we bow. The one who wore our sin and shame, now robed in majesty. The radiance of perfect love now shines for all to see. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. The fear that held us now gives way to him who is our peace. His final breath upon the cross is now alive in me. is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. Your name is victory. All praise will rise to Christ our King. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. By your Spirit I will rise from the ashes of defeat. Your resurrecting King is resurrecting me. In your name I come alive to declare your victory. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. The resurrected King is resurrecting me. The tomb where soldiers watched in vain was borrowed for 3 days. His body there would not remain. Our God has robbed the grave. Our God has robbed the